KVUE News Midday starts with breaking news.
All right, here on this 11 o'clock hour, that breaking news, House Democrats just landed back here in Texas. Moments ago, their plane touched down at Austin Bergstrom International Airport. We brought you a live view of that. They've been out of state for 2 weeks now, blocking the Republican colleagues from passing a map that would potentially allow them to pick up more seats in Congress. We have team coverage from KVUE Political Director Ashley Godot here in the studio, and also senior reporter Tony Poletsky, who's at the airport. And Tony, what are you seeing now? We couldn't see the plane a few minutes ago.
Jenny, we still can't, but we know that those Democrats are safely on the ground because we have not only seen their plane, also within the last few minutes, a couple of lawmakers on board that plane have texted me to confirm that they are back in Austin. So let me just set the stage for you a little bit here. We are at a private terminal, Signature Aviation, which is on the south side of Austin Bergstrom International Airport. This is a private terminal that is used by business officials as well as other people coming into the city non-commercially. But this plane landed at around 10:45 this morning. We had been tracking it all morning on the website FlightAware, but again, just in the last few minutes, a couple of lawmakers have texted to say that they are on the ground here in Austin. This is a heavily choreographed moment because they are landing just under an hour before the House is set to gavel in at the Texas Capitol. That is set to start around the noontime hour, we are told. So what is expected to happen is that there is a big bus that has now driven onto the tarmac here at the airport, and lawmakers are expected to board that bus and then drive to the Capitol. So it's important to note that the plane that you're seeing in the viewfinder right now is not actually the plane that carried the lawmakers. Those are other planes here at Signature Aviation. But the plane is on the other side of the building, obstructed from public view at this time. Jenny, a couple of other things that I do want to point out because this is significant. Over the past 15 days, we have heard from the governor, we have heard from the Attorney General, other prominent Republicans here in Texas and across the nation that they would be enlisting law enforcement, the Texas Department of Public Safety, the FBI, to try to track down these lawmakers. I can tell you, we have seen none of those officials here on the ground. The only officials, law enforcement that we have seen on the ground here this morning is actually the Austin Police Department. And they tell us that they are just simply here to monitor the situation and help keep the peace. But in terms of these lawmakers potentially being arrested and taken to the Capitol, there are no signs that that is happening. In fact, what we anticipate is that they are going to board this bus, again, the bus that we saw drive through those gates and onto the tarmac a short time ago. We're expecting those lawmakers to peacefully board that bus, drive to the Texas Capitol, and take their seats just in time for the House to gavel in. And so that is what's happening here. But again, we're continuing to monitor the situation. We're going to be watching for that bus to drive through the gate and again head to the Capitol. But we've seen no members of the Texas Department of Public Safety, certainly no one who appears to be affiliated with the FBI. The only law enforcement presence here at this time is the Austin Police Department. Jenny?
All right, Tony Poletsky reporting for us live at the Austin airport. We thank you for that. Political Director Ashley Godot now joins me on the anchor desk. And Ashley, this is not a surprise that they were going to come.
No, we knew that they were going to come back today because this is all orchestrated, right? So you will recall that the Democrats have made two demands, as they would like to say, in order for them to come back. And that was one, to kill the previous special session, the first special session, right, which did happen on Friday. They see that as a victory. They were able to kill that special session without any legislation passed and any legislation and making it to the governor's desk. Their second request was for California to introduce its own plan to counter the Texas plan, and that is exactly what happened. Both of those things happened, and so the reason why I think you don't see law enforcement there on the tarmac, outside the tarmac, waiting to take those civil arrest warrants, by the way, not waiting to take them into some sort of custody, has a lot to do with the optics. And that is not a good optic for the Republican Party, certainly, to have had members, their own colleagues arrested and dragged back to the Capitol. That would be something that you would frankly see in every ad going into the election cycle. Yeah, I mean, so that's not something, they don't want to draw more attention to what is going to happen today. But let's take a step back and talk a little bit about how we got here.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
It was just a couple of weeks ago. This is actually, I believe, video of when they were boarding that private plane on this morning. This is video this morning of them in Chicago when they were preparing to leave Chicago and come back here. And we were told there were meetings that happened, right? They all took a vote. They knew that the session was going to end on Friday, and they could have come back Friday, and technically the House could have got to work that day when they landed, or even Saturday. But instead they said, yeah, no, we're going to have a weekend. We need to reset. We need to think about our strategy, plan how we're moving forward. They took the weekend and are coming back today, and the House is set to gavel in at 12 noon. As you now know, they have landed. They are back here in Texas after being gone for, 15 days. They left on August the 3rd, and we want to talk about why it is that they left. This is all because of the congressional redistricting that is set to happen to give the Republican Party potentially 5 more Republican seats in Texas that would hold the Republican majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. Typically, during a president's first term, the House goes to the other party. They lose the power of the House, typically in the midterms, and President Donald Trump doesn't want to see that happen. And the Republicans at this point have been very honest that this is all partisan, and they're doing this for partisan reasons. So what you're looking at right now is our area, right? Central Texas. And our area, Austin, is one of the areas that would be directly impacted if this were to happen. So you notice on the current map, you can see District 37. It stretches from Austin all the way down to Hayes County. And then you have that's 35, and 37 is Austin proper, represented by Representative Lloyd Dyka. Well, under the new maps, this would just switch places, and basically they would be in the same area. Doggett and Kassar would have to run against one another. This that you're looking at now, it looks like we've moved on to the Houston map. And this map is particularly interesting because you have in the center of Houston essentially 3 blue districts. It combines 2 of those districts and then takes that 3rd district out to the east, making it potentially red. If we go up north and talk about what's happening in the DFW area, that map really would impact the seats of Congressman Mark Vesey and Congresswoman Julie Johnson. We have that map. I think we're going to try to get it queued up for you all so that we can see it in just a minute here. What you're looking at right now is still Houston and what would happen in Houston. This is a look at what would happen in North Texas. And basically, it would take U.S. Representative Julie Johnson's district and push it further out to make that red. And then when we go down to the Rio Grande Valley, there are 2 districts that really would be impacted, and those are the districts of Representative Henry Cuellar as well as Representative Vicente Gonzalez, and it just moves those districts further north. And so those are the districts that would essentially become red, flip from red to blue. And let's talk about what's happening, because that was one of the questions I got was, oh, well, this is all going to take, they're going to take their time, right, Jenny? I mean, a special session is still 30 days, all of this. No, this is going to move very quickly. They have already had hearings on all of these maps. They frankly have had hearings on the other bills. And what you saw happen Friday was the Senate gavelled in, the special session 1 ended, special session 2 started, right? And the Senate suspended rules and started having hearings. They had a hearing on their maps on Sunday and advanced that map out. And so the House has been unable to do business up until this point, but we already have seen all of the major legislation that is going to get filed this session that is on the governor's special session call. And that is why we heard Speaker of the House, Justin Burrows, say he thinks that they're going to be finished before Labor Day, because he thinks they're going to be able to knock all of this out. You know, a special session is 30 days, but it doesn't have to take 30 days. They can pass what they want to pass and leave, or not pass anything at all and leave. And so we anticipate things to move very quickly quickly. Once they gavel in at 12 noon, and it will be 12 noon because Speaker Burrows is a stickler for time. He really, really wants to get things started. They'll start, and they will start right then and there assigning those bills to committee. And then we'll start to see a lot of things happening this week.
Okay, so earlier this morning, House Minority Leader Jean Wu said that they're now moving to the next phase of the redistricting fight, and that's establishing a legal record. What does that mean, Ashley?
So they needed to come back so they could vote. So a lot of the conversation that happens, a lot of the debate that happens on the floor, those arguments, that intent is all used in court whenever groups sue so that you have legislative intent. You have to establish legislative intent. So we have no doubt that the congressional map is going to be voted out and that it is going to become law, that Governor Abbott, will sign it. These maps will be done. That bill will pass. But then the lawsuits are going to start rolling in, right? We have lawsuits still going from the last time they passed maps. In fact, they're still fighting in court about the current map that we have. But that's what they're talking about, the legal precedent. They have to lay it all out and have on the record, their Republican colleagues saying, no, this is about partisanship, and part of that is the districts that are going to be impacted are largely the districts that are made up of black and brown voters. And so that's where we start to talk about the Voting Rights Act and whether or not this is disenfranchising and taking the voices away from black and brown voters. Even the district that's here in Austin, District 37, that's a largely Latino district. That's the majority of who lives there. And so you can't take race into consideration when you draw maps. The Supreme Court recently said you can take political party into consideration, but you can't take race into consideration. But their point is, look at who this disenfranchises. Look who this takes the voices away from.
Political Director Ashley Goodell, we appreciate that. And we will have much more coverage about the Democrats coming back. We have political science professor from St. Ed's, Brian Smith, coming on in a few minutes. We appreciate your time, as well as Tony Pletsky's time.